Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Friends, human capital management, it's such an important part of any person's business, both for the employer and the employee. That's right. The average employee now will change career paths over 3 times. And what does that mean? That means it's not just about the CV/resume that's so important. It's also critical to get all those soft skills right. But the good news is that today we have more technology and more solutions than ever to help really manage finding for an employer that right employee, and for the employee finding that right home. And with us today, we have James Cooper-Jones and Oliver Fair of Simply. And Simply is a company that has special software that enables both employers and the employees to find that great fit. And with us to talk about them, gentlemen, welcome to 18 Minutes with 180 Markets.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having us.
James, Oliver, whichever one of you wants to go first, and both of you I want to hear from, can you just tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. So my background is a finance, management accounting background, worked around the world in both public and private companies. What brings me to Simply is really a desire around finding technologies that can impact the work environment and our communities. So lived in Japan, my children are Australian Japanese. Very important to me that we live in an environment where there is diversity and inclusion, but also worked at some places where I really enjoyed and some places I didn't. And so I understand how important to our lives finding that connection between my work environment and my job. And that's what's brought me to Simply.
All right, myself a bit. So yeah, my name's Oliver. I joined Simply sort of at the beginning when we first came up with that concept of it. I'm a full stack developer. I've worked in a series of startups, also various companies. I've done consulting all the way through to working for some large enterprises listed on the stock exchange. What brought me to Simply as well is sort of the concept of, hiring people for values and realizing how important it is to actually work for a company that you actually want to work for. It's not just, you're getting paid a lot or, it's got good work-life balance is also important, but fitting into the team and really feeling, like you mix with the team. I feel like that's very important.
Yeah. And James, getting into the Simply product itself, and Oliver, you alluded to the point of values. How does Simply actually work? And specifically, can you just talk about how it fits into that values frame?
Sure. So values recruitment, when we talk about values, what we're talking about is finding the right personality type for the right role. And so we work on several different axes, and what we've developed is proven values-based recruitment methodologies and adapted them into a easy-to-use technology. These methodologies have been proven to increase productivity, retention, and diversity.
And how is it different than, say, I know in my life, I've taken like a Myers-Briggs personality test, which took an awfully long time and was quite painful. How does Simply solve the problem maybe a little bit better than it used to be done?
Sure. When we interviewed managers and from our own work experience, we knew that these technologies are there. Values-based recruitment methodologies are known about to managers. You mentioned one of them. There's also a plethora of analog ways of approaching this through psychology or a psych major, HR director. What we found is managers were aware of these methodologies. They just didn't have the time to implement them. So we saw that there was an ability to find the right personality type for the right role, the right values fit, but this technology was sitting on the shelf. These methodologies were sitting on the shelf merely because managers and candidates didn't have time to do them. So that's a big part of the Simply brand, and it's all in the name. It's making these methodologies simple, democratizing them and making them access to a wider addressable market. And so what we've done is adapted these methodologies into a digital format using a powerful algorithm and they're easy to set up and use. For the employer, it generally takes about 10 to 15 minutes to set up a profile, a role profile, and it generally takes about the same time for a candidate to apply, 10 to 15 minutes. When that's compared to, say, an analog system, as in that's hours, sometimes days to set up a system like that, or some of the other maybe slightly digital systems, again, it's hours, minutes compared to hours.
Yeah, I remember, I think it took me about 3 hours, and it sounds like Simply is a lot faster than that. For either one of you, I have to ask, and just digging into the detail a little bit, how do you prevent on all these types of surveys, exams, whatever you want to call it, how do you prevent cheating? In other words, the fact that employees, let's face it, they want to tell an employer what they want to hear. How do you work around that, if you don't mind me asking?
I can do that one. So the way it's built is there's no real right and wrong answer. When the employer sets up the questions, they kind of use a series of axes to determine what kind of a role and personality is suited to the role. The candidate, when they're answering the questions, they don't really know what is the right and wrong answer, because the answers kind of, they're quite fluid how they're put together. We also have another system built in where it measures the consistency of the answers. So if someone is trying to game the system, it quite clearly indicates that the consistency can be quite off the regular, it's not close to 100%. So that way we can see, they are trying to actually manipulate their answer to fit into what they think is the correct role. So that's how we've built it, yeah.
Right. So in a nutshell, Simply, it's more accurate, faster, and cheaper than, say, existing methodologies. Is that a good way to frame it?
Absolutely. So we say it's simply 5 minutes to set up, years of benefits.
Yep, great. And also, ESG is such a key thematic now for investors. People want to do good and be good. How does Simply fit into this whole framework?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's very core to why we started Simply. From my perspective, having done several technology launches previously, launched them overseas, what I am drawn to is technologies that have a social impact. And that was very big when Ollie, to the question of why we started Simply, when Ollie and I got together. So we have two approaches. Our technology is social impacting, and our business approach is social impacting. Focusing on the technology first, what studies have found is when you approach recruitment on a values-based method, what you're doing, there is a natural increase to diversity. The conventional way to approach recruitment is to focus on qualifications and experience, and then later in the process, consider about personality type and values. What we found when we talked to managers was that was not necessarily their preferred way of doing it, but it was just the way it was done, or their other systems were not really accessible, took too much time, as we discussed. When you approach the Simply methodology, you're bringing values into focus. Qualifications and experience are considered, but the main criteria is values. Studies have shown when you focus on values alignment as opposed to qualifications and education, then there is an increase in diversity. The other application that Simply has is blind hiring. Now, in any kind of diversity recruitment process, one of your core tasks is to remove unconscious bias. Now, unconscious bias is bias that is inheriting in most people, in all of us, and there can be triggers in an application from a candidate that triggers unconscious bias in the manager or the recruitment executive. That may be their name, their place of education, their place of work, previous work history, or whatnot. So a blind hiring process removes all those criteria and just presents the candidate. When you're approaching a recruitment process with qualifications and education experience as your focus, you've got a dilemma because you have no other way to evaluate your candidate. So say you get 1,200, 5,000 candidates. If you're focusing and evaluating your candidates on qualifications and experience, how do you evaluate those if you remove them? And in the diversity and recruitment process, an identification of qualifications and place of education, experience, and former place of work are often unconscious bias triggers. So by combining blind hiring and values-based recruitment in the Simply system, by focusing on values, you have a criteria that you can evaluate your candidates on, other than qualifications and experience, which is values-based recruitment. Combining that with blind hiring, where in the Simply system, we remove the name, we remove the education and experience until the final evaluation process, you're dramatically reducing unconscious bias in the process. And this has been proven around the world. Blind hiring, again, is one of those technologies, Greg, that industry is aware of. It's just having an efficient and time-effective way of implementing it. And Simply does that by combining values-based recruitment with blind hiring. It's a very effective tool for diversity recruitment.
Yep. I can definitely see the advantages of it for sure. And there's a saying that, you aren't the sum of your mistakes. And I suppose that in some ways Simply helps solve that problem for the employees and the employers as well. James, maybe turning over to the business model, can you just talk about how to Simply make money? What is the revenue model? And also then maybe can we get into just how does it fit in with existing human resources management software?
Sure. So Simply works on a very simple software as a service or SaaS model. It's a subscription model and then a pricing tier depending on the size of the company and the level of support. Some companies like to use these systems just plug and play, and then other companies like to have more support, and we have an option for both. One of the beauties of Simply system is it's not a displacement technology. So displacement technologies are sometimes iPhones would be a good displacement technology, so would cars. So if you're buying an iPhone, you need to buy a Samsung or an Apple. If you're buying a car, you need to buy a Toyota or a Tesla. Simply is not. The Simply can be used as a standalone system, or it can be integrated with any CRM, HRM, or other HR technology. If a client has an existing system, we can integrate with them and bring those values-based recruitment and diversity technologies into their existing system, or they can use the system as a standalone.
And maybe, following on that, Ali, maybe this is a question for you. Is that integration very challenging for an employer, or is it I keep this at a high level because we're not all software engineers. Is it a difficult integration?
Well, we already have available exporting and importing of CSV and data files as required. So if their system has the ability to import and export these files, it's already available. We also have the ability to integrate into the APIs of these other products available. So, there's a lot of large products available out there in the market, like Workday, Talio. So, we have the opportunity that we can actually integrate directly into them and streamline the process, making it seamless to the company.
Sounds good. Now, guys, as you know, businesses cost money to start up, especially in the beginning. Can you just talk about simply where do you stand as far as in your capital structure in terms of your life cycle?
Sure. So the product is ready for commercial release. And what we're doing at the moment is doing a Series A of $5 million to fund that commercial release. We see a global opportunity in the HR technology industry, and a lot of the success stories of late have a global launch model which we're adopting. So the use of funds for the Series A will be to launch the product here in Australia, but particularly overseas in the UK, the USA, and in Asia. The structure of the Series A is a convertible note, which we feel provides a good potential upside for investors, particularly in this booming HR technology space at the moment. A lot of that groundwork's begun, Greg. So we have had great support in the UK from the West Australian government that supported us up there, and we're working closely with the Department of International Trade in the UK, and of course our university partners here in Birmingham and Manchester. So we have already a London office and a team member up there, which is great. So ready to hit the ground running. We have a presence in the USA and a team member in the USA. And then we have in the last week signed a reseller agreement out of Singapore And so ASEAN is also moving ahead quickly.
Great. Hey, you spoke about, James, that there are a lot of other HR types of transactions out there. Why has there been such technology change in the human resources area over, let's just call it the last decade?
Sure. I think that I would break that down into kind of 3 points. I think employee experience is the first one, and that's on both sides, the employee side and the employer side. I think the employers are understanding that if they can improve the employee experience of their team members, that team members are happy, and happy team members are more productive. And then a common dilemma for employers is retention. I think the pool of capable candidates is becoming more competitive. And so employers are constantly concerned about keeping people that they get. So if there's a better employee experience, those employees are likely to stay. I think candidates are being more selective around where they move, and they want to move for more soft skills and values-based elements rather than just a bigger paycheck. And that's been a consistent trend. So those employee experience from both sides, the employees want a better experience, and I think managers are becoming more aware about making a better employee experience will have a positive impact on their bottom line. What we're seeing also then, I would say, is an increase in diversity and inclusion. We're seeing the movements of late. I think it's been there for some time, but been made more prominent through the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too and equal pay, which are very, very appropriate. So what we're seeing is a change in accountability, where I think managers could have perhaps given indications of what they were trying to achieve on diversity, but now I think shareholders, stakeholders, community members are holding them more accountable. So I think also managers are becoming more aware of the benefits of diversity, and there's a lot of research out there saying that diverse companies are more outperform their non-diverse partners. So employee experience and diversity. I think the last one would probably be team collaboration and just the digitization of our workplace. It's not, I think we all understand that data and digitization is just increasing. And that's probably, again, brought into focus because of the pandemic, and now this remote working culture that is here, we're all seeing is here to stay. It's easy to see that through some examples. Atlassian, which is one of Australia's largest tech companies, a very big success story, Mum's Garage to now NASDAQ listed in $100 billion market cap, is a team collaboration tool. So as we move into this, the workplace, we are working with bigger teams over bigger areas, and we're not interacting on a day-to-day basis, face-to-face. We're using technology to do that. So I think that employee experience and then diversity and then more collaboration tools are seeing an increasing trend in desire for HR technologies and technologies in the workplace.
Yeah, and James, don't you think, even on that note, sadly with COVID, there is a much more spread out workforce, which as an employer makes it much more difficult to track employees. And frankly, and for employees, they can feel very isolated. Is that also where Simply can help figure out, like, what is it that both sides of the coin of the equation need?
Absolutely. As we go through our values, we assess, it gives a good guide for managers who needs support and who will need more of that support. I was talking with a manager recently who said his approach to recruitment was always to look someone in the eye and get a feel for them. And what he's referring to is values fit. I get a sense that we're probably on the same page values wise. But then he referred to, he's worked with someone for 2.5 years and he's never met that individual. So that's becoming more common. So we do need technologies that are efficient and easy to use, but that help us manage teams over a broader landscape. Great.
Hey, James, Oliver, for both of you, unfortunately, we have to keep these interviews fairly short. Do you have any closing remarks for the audience?
Only to say this is something we really believe in. We can see that it can really change the way that we work going forward. So we welcome anyone to come on this journey with us.
Excellent, excellent. And I can say for sure that both sides of the coin. I've been an employee and an employer. There is nothing more important than having the right people in an organization. And with that, James, Oliver, thank you very much for your time. And we're definitely looking forward to the story with you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for watching another presentation by 180 Markets. Don't forget, if you want access to thousands of ASX capital raises, head on over to 180markets.com.au, sign up, and get on board for our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.